Okay, so digital project, you should have a couple of these icons on your desktop. There is the license administrator, and then the actual button to run the program. Do you have these on your desktop, or are they buried in the start menu?
This digital project is often there, but not the first one.
Not the license administrator?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody run digital project first, so double click on it. I've already got mine open. Click on Start in the upper left. Do you have Project Center? Okay. Project, Geometry, Architecture, and Structures. Do you have Drawings? Yeah. Do you have Project Standards? Knowledge Advisor, Knowledge Template. You might have a few more than this also. Okay, digital project comes with different workbenches. Just like CATIA comes with different workbenches. Some workbenches are for sheet metal, some are for MEP, some are for freestyle design, some are for surface design, some are for subdivision surfaces. Digital project is like CATIA, it has workbenches. These are your workbenches. Project is for managing the assembly of a project, the site, the different buildings on a site, the location of that site. Geometry is for modeling geometry, surfaces, solids, wireframes. Architecture and structures is for modeling architectural elements like walls and beams and columns and doors and windows and openings, rooms, spaces. Assembly design is more CATIA-like and for assembling and manipulating assemblies, so moving them around, reorganizing assemblies with constraints. Drawings, for making drawings from your model. And project standards, those are more the knowledge-based workbenches. Knowledge advisor is for building rules, and we'll talk about rules. Knowledge template is for writing knowledge patterns and creating document templates, and we'll get to those as well. The first thing we'll do is go to File, New. And these are the different types of files you can create in Digital Project. There are 3 that I make that I have only ever used. The drawing, the part, and the product. I will distribute to you a catalog a little later, but for now, I've never made a catalog, I've just edited catalogs. So the first thing we'll do is we'll scroll down to a part. So select part, click OK. You get this little dialog, and you want to make sure these, at least the top 2 are checked. You want hybrid design, you want a geometrical set. You never really need to start with an ordered geometrical set. And yes, you leave this unchecked. You want to see it because you want to give it a name. You want to give your part a name. I'm going to call it PW_pencil. Always capital and never spaces. If you have a space, use an underscore, and always type in caps. Hit OK. And your blue screen should pop up. You might not have the same layout as me. you should have this layout, right? More or less. One thing I like to add to the top, if you right click, these are the different toolbars you can show. Actually, let's check. Let's make sure everybody's in geometry. If you hover over this little icon, it will tell you what workbench you're in. Is everybody in geometry? No. What are you guys in? Okay. Let's switch to geometry. So start, project center, geometry. Now you look like mine. Okay. If you want to add more, I like to add the graphics properties so I can change colors of objects. So if you right click up in this silver space, you get the different toolbars that you can view in your workspace. Check graphics properties, and you get graphics properties. The other thing I'm going to change is I'm going to pull, my resolution is low. I can't see all of the tools on this toolbar, and I know I can't see them because I've got this little double arrow right here. So I'm going to pull this off to the side so I can see the rest of those tools. I don't care so much about these right now. I'm going to leave these toolbars the way they are. Digital Project is mostly button based. You don't really line enter any text. You can if you want to, but it's a lot easier to just go hunt and peck the button you want to, or the command you want to run. If you want to make a point, it's up here. Line, plane, you get the tooltip. So if you hover over a button, it'll tell you what you make with that button. And the little down arrow means there's more. The menu's collapsed, so you can expand that menu. So for line, you can make different kinds of lines. You can make an axis, or you can make a polyline. For circle, you can make a circle, a corner, a connected curve like a fillet, or a conic curve, which is an ellipse. For a spline, you can make a helix, a spiral, or a spine. I don't know that I've ever used spine before. Some of these you'll use very, very often. Some of them you'll hardly ever use. Another way you can run a command, if you don't know where the button is, you can go up through the menu up here. So you can insert a point, or a line, or a plane. And when you do that, it's going to give you a dialog box asking you how you want to create that geometry. So let's say you start pulling out these toolbars and you close it, and you pull out this toolbar and you close it, and you start forgetting which toolbars you've opened and closed, and you can't find them here, even though you can right click and turn everything else on. Let's say you just get into a jumbled mess and you want to just go back to the default settings. You can right click. This is what I did in the beginning. Right click, go down to Customize, Toolbars, Restore All Contents, yes, Restore Position, okay. Now it hit okay, and all of my toolbars have gone back to the default setting. So I'm going to pull this one out again. So as I mentioned before, the tree on the left here is your organization. You saw a lot of products and parts nested in the tree when I was going through the examples. The part file is structured the same way as the assembly files. So inside the part, this is the root. There are a few planes, and well, I have axis system in my first geometric set. You probably don't. I'm just going to delete it. You have an axis system up here, don't you? Yeah. So you've got a geometric set, and all objects that you create go inside geometric sets, or part bodies, or ordered geometrical sets. Solid geometry goes in a part body. Surface geometry and wireframe geometry goes in a geometrical set. You can make a new geometrical set up in the toolbar here, or by using Insert Geometrical Set. My preferred way of making a geometrical set is click the little down button and select it right here. And that'll drop a geometrical set in your model. When it's underlined, when the geometrical set is underlined, that means that is the active geometrical set. Any geometry that you create is going to be placed inside of that geometrical set. If you want to switch the active geometrical set from right now from 2 to 1, right click on the geometrical set and say define in work object. Now number 1 is underlined. If I make a point, it's going to go here. Let's say I make a point here and I want it to go here. You can move a 1 point, you can move any number of objects from one geometric set to another. Let me just show these things. You don't have to do this. If I make 3 points inside geometrical set 1, but I want them to be in geometrical set 2, I can select them and I can drag them. Well, I can drag one at a time from one to the other. Maybe I'll make that bigger. Is that easier to see? I can go one at a time backwards, or I can select them all, right click, selected objects, change geometrical set. Put them before the last position in that geometrical set. Click OK. And so now they've been moved into geometrical set number 2. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete geometrical set number 2. So I just selected it and hit delete. And I'm going to rename geometrical set 1 by right-clicking on it and going to Properties. Here you see Alt plus Enter is right next to Properties. That's a shortcut. If you select geometrical set, press Alt and Enter, it'll give you a Properties window. If you right-click and you press O, so right-click and O, it'll give you the Properties window. So those are 2 shortcuts to get the Properties window. Go to Feature Properties, and we're going to change the feature name to Input. Inputs. And press Enter, or OK. So now we've got a geometrical set for inputs. We're going to make a plane. So So everybody up on the right hand side, upper right, there's a little plane button. Select plane, and we're going to make offset from plane. So the reference, there are two ways to select the reference. You can select it in the model, and you don't have these visible. You've got your coordinate system visible. So you can select the XY plane in the model, or you can select it up in the tree. I'm going to select it up in the tree, and I'm going to offset it. Okay. I'm set to metric. I'm set to metric because last time I was working in Digital Project, it was in metric, because the last project I work on is a metric project. I can type in, let's say I want to offset this 1 inch. I can type in 25 millimeters, or I can type in 1 inch. Underscore, or undercase I, undercase n, lowercase I, lowercase n. Press enter, and now I have plane.1 in my model with a 25.4 millimeter offset. If I want to change my units to inches, just to make things easier for you, I press F10, go to parameters and measures. So this is my options window. Go to parameters and measures, units, and switch my length to inches. Are you in inches or are you in feet? You're in inches. Okay, then I'll go to inches. Okay. So now I'm at I have my 1 inch offset. If you want to edit the plane later, because this plane is it's an object in the model now, but it's not a dead object, it's a live object. You can double click on it, and it brings up that dialog box again. So anytime you create a piece of geometry in Digital Project, you can edit it later. And there's a dependency, or there's dependencies and hierarchy built into the order in which you create your geometry. So this plane is based on the XY plane. It's always going to be based on the XY plane by an offset until you redefine it. If I want to redefine this as an offset plane from the YZ, I can just change the reference. If I want to change this from a 1 inch offset to a 2 inch offset, I can change it to 2, and I can preview that. If I just want to quickly roughly move it, I can grab one of these arrows and move it up or down or in whatever direction. And you see the dialog box updating. I'm just going to set this back to 1 inch. Press enter. And I'm going to give it a name. I don't want it to be called plane.1. I'm going to call this my base plane. So right click and properties. Base plane. And I'm going to abbreviate plane with PL. And enter. Now I'm going to use just this plane to build everything else off of. So I'm going to hide my other 3 planes. You can hide your axis system. If you've got an axis system up here, If you just right click on that axis system and go to hide show, it should disappear. And all you should see is this plane. No? Success? No? Okay, two things. One, if your tree is so small you can't see that you can expand, press Control and zoom in. That'll show you these icons. If it has a plus, it means it has contents and you can expand it. Geometric inputs can be expanded. Now it's expanded, it can be collapsed by clicking the minus. Base plane can be expanded because it has a property, an offset property. It can be collapsed with the minus. If your whole part is hiding when you try to hide the axis system, it's because it's not expanded. So expand the axis system and then hide it. You'll notice when your plane disappears and everything disappears, it's because you've hidden the whole part. And the part has gotten shaded. When it's shaded like this, it means it's hidden. So if I right click and go to hide show, it's not shaded anymore. If your plane disappears, zoom extents or fit all will bring it back. And that's it for right now. The base plane can be expanded, right? It has a property, an offset property. You can change the offset of that plane by double clicking and changing the value of that offset in this dialog box. And whoa, 1.5 inches blew it off the screen. So I can reframe on it. There, it brought it back. If I show my original XY plane, sorry, I'm doing it very fast. I right click and press H. Right click and press H. If it's underlined here, that's the shortcut key, the hotkey to get it, the shortcut. So if I show that XY plane and I zoom extents, now I've got it. I'm going to switch that back to 1 inch. Hide that. So everybody has inputs and a base plane. I'm going to make another plane and offset that plane from my base plane. And I'm going to offset this 12 inches. And because my default unit is inches, if I just type in 12, Digital Project will infer inches. And if I look at the offset, I've got a 12-inch offset for base plane, or from base plane. Now that plane is way off screen. If I click zoom extents or fit all in, now I've got my two planes. I'm going to rename this plane. So right click properties, top plane. Does everybody have top plane? Okay, so we still haven't gone over rotate, zoom, or pan. We've just created a couple planes. Now we've got enough geometry where I think it makes sense to try to rotate. First, we'll pan. Middle click gives you the little up, down, left, right arrows, and you can pan with that. Anybody having troubles with pan? Okay. Get it so it's something like this. And now hold down, while you're still holding down the middle button, hold down the right button. And you should get that circle. Now you're rotating. You see the compass in the upper right-hand corner? Rotate with my view. If you let go of the right, just the right button, keep the middle button pushed, let go of the right button, and move the mouse up and down, you're zooming. Okay? So let's go through that again. Hands up. Hands down. Middle button. Middle button pans. Right click, keeping the middle button down. Just right click and release and you're zooming. Hold down the right and you're rotating. So hold down middle and right at the same time and you're rotating. I have a cheat sheet for navigation that I will email you in case you forget. But all this does is tell you what I just told you. Middle click is pan. Middle click, hold down right click. Hold down middle, hold down right, and you're rotating. Release right, and you're zooming. You'll get the hang of it. Pretty soon you'll be jittery, going back and forth all around your models like. All right. Anyway. So everybody's got two planes. We're going to make 2 points. We're going to make a point on a plane, on the base plane, and a point on the top plane. So point up here. Default, it might be by coordinates. But if you select the point and then you select a plane, Digital Project is going to think that you want to make a point on a plane. So you select a point and then you make a plane, or you make a point and then you put it anywhere you want. I'm going to put mine at roughly 5, 4, minus 5, 4. So now I've got, yours will say point.1. Mine says point.4. Mine says point.4 because Digital Project makes points sequentially by default. And I already made 3 points and then deleted them. So my point.4 is just the next in line. I don't want to leave it as point.4. I'm going to rename it base point, or yeah, we'll call it base point for now. Right click, properties, base underscore PT. So we've got a base plane and a base point. And then I'm going to make another point, and I'm going to put this one on the top plane, anywhere, and I'm going to call it top point. Top underscore point. The other thing you'll notice is when you zoom in and out, the size of your plane scales dynamically. You can turn that on or off. My preference is to leave it on. See, the points get closer together as I zoom out, and the planes get larger. Sometimes that's annoying. In a really big model and you've got thousands of planes, it's annoying. But you just hide them then. So this is our base construction. Next, we're going to make another geometrical set, and we're going to start building the pencil. So this is the input geometry that we're going to use for our pencil. So, geometrical set, or insert geometrical set. I'm going to use the button. Remember, there's the down arrow to get to this one. And I'm going to rename this, right-click, properties, pw underscore pencil. And enter. I'm going to make another geometrical set because I want to organize the geometry that I make inside the pencil. So I want to further organize it. So I'm going to make another geometrical set. It dropped it underneath my active PW pencil. I'm going to right click, properties, and call this construction. And enter. I want this geometrical set inside PW pencil. So I'm just going to select it and drag it over PW pencil. And then expand it. Construction should be active. So everybody got this? Yeah? If it is not active, right click on construction and define in work object. Next, we're going to make a line connecting these 2 points. So find the line button underneath point. Do you get by default point to point? Okay. If you want to look, here are the 6 ways to make a line. We're going to use point to point. We're going to use point 1 as the base point and point 2 as the top point. And that's all we're going to do with this right now. Press OK. Expand construction. And we've got line.1. Yeah? So I mentioned that Digital Project maintains a hierarchy between geometry that you've created. And now, the same way that this plane is based off of this plane, this line is based off of these points. So if you double click on top point, either in the model or in the tree, and then you click anywhere on that plane, the line's going to start to follow. Similarly, if you double click on the plane and you start to move it up and down, the line, the point and the line are going to follow. I'm going to leave the plane at 12. Keep the points somewhat where they were. And I'm going to make a point on this line. So select point, and you can either pick on curve from the drop-down menu, or you can select the line in the tree, or in the model. Now you have three options for creating the point on the line. You can go by distance on curve, you can go by distance along direction, or you can go by ratio on curve. I'm going to go by distance on curve, and I'm going to put it at 1 inch. And then I can preview that and press OK. So now I zoom in. There's my point, 1 inch on that line. If I move the plane, that point will always stay 1 inch on that line. And so this point has a property, a length property. That property can be changed just like the offset of the plane could be changed. And one thing that's very powerful with Digital Project is you can link this parameter to an outside parameter. So let's do that. Let's make a new length parameter up here by clicking on formula. See the formula button down here? Click on formula. These are all the parameters in the model right now. Most of these are hidden. We're going to make a new parameter of type length. So select length out of this drop-down or pop-up menu, and then click on the new parameter. That should have given you this in your tree, parameters set in your tree. Yeah? Press OK and expand that. So we're going to change the model a little bit. This parameter that we made, length.1, let's delete it. Select it in the tree, and press delete. This point, my point.6, your point.4, 3. Double click on that and change it. We're going to change the definition of that point from distance on curve to ratio of curve length. 1 inch along my line was a ratio of 0.07 of that line. The line, you can imagine, has a 0 and a 1. And the ratio is going to be a percentage of the length of that line, or from 0 to 1. The position of the point is 0 to 1. So if I go to 0.2, 0.25, 0.25, that point is going to be a quarter of the length of that line. Preview, there's 0.25. I'm going to leave it at 0.2. So the ratio of curve length, 0.2. Click OK, and there it is. Was everybody able to make that switch? Okay. Now we're going to make a formula. And, well, we're going to make a parameter by clicking on formula. So select the formula button. You get this dialog box. We're going to make a parameter of type real. So select real. Click new parameter of type. Does everybody have real in the tree? Press OK. I'm going to right click and rename this pencil tip. Press OK. Now I want to link the ratio of this point to this parameter. So if I double click on the ratio, it gives me the parameter edit parameter dialog box. I can right click inside this value, the 0.2, right click, edit formula. When I edit formula, I select pencil tip, and now I have pencil tip inside the window here, and press OK. And now this value is grayed out with the value that's of this parameter. Did everybody get that? Press OK. And now I've got a little hat, little graduation hat on that ratio. And if I change this parameter, if I double click on this pencil tip parameter and change it from 0 to 0.2, the ratio has changed. And the link between this parameter and this parameter has been encapsulated by a formula. So now I've got relations. Does everybody have relations in the tree? Yeah? Inside relations, there's a formula. That formula is connecting pencil tip to ratio, or ratio to pencil tip. Okay, so now that we've created that link, this point is now controlled by the parameter. We're going to put a plane normal to this line at this point. So click on the plane button, select the line, and mine defaulted to through two lines. Is everybody else's default to through two lines? Yeah? If you click on this field, you want to go to normal to curve. And the point we're going to place it at is 0.3, 0.6. We'll rename it. And press OK. Everybody have a plane? Now we're going to make another point. We're going to make a point on that plane. And what we're doing is we're constructing the base geometry for the pencil. And we want the pencil to have a behavior. We want the pencil to be able to rotate. The pencil is going to be able to get shorter. The pencil is going to be able to rotate. The nice thing about a parametric model is you can embed behaviors into the model. And so our pencil is going to be able to perform something. It's going to twist. It's going to get shorter. It's going to get shorter like you're sharpening it. And if you go through the second video, you'll see it go from a flat end to a sharp end. So the curve now, if we're going to do point, does everybody have the point definition button up? Definition window? Select point. We're going to put it on a plane. We're going to put it on this plane right here, plane.3. And what I want to do right now is I don't want this point to be floating off in space down here. I want it to reference this point. So if I go to reference and not default origin, I want this to reference my point.6. Now it's the point is on that plane, but the height and the x and y is referenced to the point on the curve, the point on the line. I'm just going to put it right there, somewhere kind of close. And now I'm going to draw a line from this point right here to this point out here, from my point 6 to my point 7. So line by points, point to point. It's easier for me to select it in the tree. So point 6 to point 7. Okay. Before we move on too much further, let's save this so we don't lose it if DP decides to crash. If I say DP, that's short for digital project. So if DP crashes, you don't lose your work. File, save as. I'm just going to drop it on my desktop. PW pencil. Save. Okay, so now we're going to create the hexagon for the pencil. And we're going to do that by making a sketch on this plane. Sketch button is up here, positioned sketch. And to make a sketch, you really only need to give it one input. You need to give it a plane. This is going to be a planar drawing that has internal constraints and defined outputs. We're gonna further constrain it by giving it other inputs as well, but the first one we need to give it is absolutely a plane. So just select plane.3. Origin, we want the origin to be a projection point. So select projection point, and then click on that point on the line. My point 6, your point 3. And we also want to define an orientation. So we're not going to go with implicit. We're going to go to parallel to line. So select parallel to line from the drop-down. And select your line.2. So now our V and our H axes, our vertical and horizontal axes, are aligned with the line and centered at the point on our plane. Press OK, and your screen probably resumed like that. Am I right? Did your screen do some rezooming perpendicular to that plane? I've turned that off by default. You can turn it off later. Leave it for now. Do yours have this grid? You can turn that on or off right here. I prefer not to see it, so I turn it off. And also, if you want to rotate out of that perpendicular mode, you can just rotate out. Rotate, middle click, hold down middle, hold down right, and you can rotate out of that. We're going to make a hexagon shape. So if you see if you go to rectangle over here and you hit the little drop down arrow, you can grab hexagon. And really you can grab any number of shapes. I think if you select hexagon, you can pick a different number of sides somewhere. I don't know where. We're going to make a hexagon, and you see if you kind of move your cursor around, you get these dotted lines. These are constraints that Digital Project wants to make. I'm going to go down and center on my point, my projection point, that point dot 6 or point dot 3. Click on that point and then come out. And you see your hexagon starts to take shape. Just click anywhere. And you see it's created all kinds of constraints. These little circle constraints are called coincidence constraints. That's going to bring two lines together. It's going to do parallel constraints between that one and that one. It's doing distance constraints. And if you want, you can select it. You can grab a line and you can move it around. You can grab a point and you can move that around. If you wanted to draw this hexagon from scratch, you could use this profile and draw it from scratch, but you get all kinds of profiles, kind of hard to control. I'm not a big fan of it. Anyway, you've just got a hexagon. One thing I want to do is I want to constrain this hexagon to the line, or to our, let's constrain it to the vertical axes. So select vertical, hold down Control, and select one of these lines. So they're both orange. Vertical is orange, and this line is orange. And go up to the Constraints Defined in Dialog Box button. Does everybody see that? Yeah? If you click that button, you get this window. And this isn't the constraint I wanted. So I'm going to close out. What I actually want is that point. Can you see that? Select, it's kind of tough to grab. That point. And the vertical. And I want to make them coincidence. What I want to do is constrain that point to the vertical axes, and because the sketch is constrained to the orientation of the line, when the line moves, the sketch moves, that point moves, the entire hexagon will rotate. So did everybody get that? Select this point, select the vertical axes, select constraints in dialog, defined in dialog box, select coincidence, and click OK. Now I cannot rotate my hexagon anymore. I can scale it, but I can't rotate it. I also want to define the size of this hexagon. What's a pencil? A quarter inch thick from side to side. So select one of these lines and select its opposing line. Do the constraints defined in dialog box and hit distance. Press OK. Right now this thing is way too big. It's 2.7 inches between them. I'm going to double click on that constraint, that distance constraint, and make it 0.25 inches. Now it's gotten really small. I have to zoom in. And your sketch should have turned green. Did everyone's sketch turn green? A green sketch means that it's fully constrained. It cannot be constrained anymore. If you try to constrain this anymore, it's going to be a broken sketch. If I can over constrain my sketch by changing the angle of that hexagon. If I try to constrain the angle of the hexagon, it's going to say, no, you can't do that. You're constraining me by length already. If you want to constrain it by angle instead, then you need to release the length constraint. So leave it like that. And now we're going to output the geometry from this sketch so that it can be used in the model. The sketch is kind of it internalizes everything. It's building a lot of geometry inside the sketch, like these circles for construction. And we want to output just our geometry. So if you select any one of these lines, select the line. There's a button down here that is Output Profile. If you select Output Profile, it's going to give you Output Geometry, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Press OK. Now you'll see inside your sketch you've got an absolute axis, you've got geometry, and you've got a bunch of geometry. You've got constraints, a lot of constraints, and now you've got an output profile. You used the output feature button here. If you have output feature, that's because you used this one. You want to make a profile.
Which is right next to it.
Yeah. And you don't have to, as long as the line or polyline is continuous, you don't have to select each individual segment and then click output feature. You just select one of them. Digital Project will recognize that it's continuous and it will output just the feature, or the profile. Once again, that was select one line, click output feature, and you get a list of 6 lines. Press OK and you've got your profile right here. And then to leave the sketch, click on the Exit Workbench. And that should reorient your view to wherever you were when you entered the sketch. Does everybody have that? Okay, so if you zoom in, if you grab this point, the fun thing is, if you double click on this point, you start to move it around on that plane, you'll see the hexagon rotate with it. Press OK. And now, I did not give you an output feature. If you select your output feature, that profile.1, and go over here and extrude it, profile 1 for extrude, extrude in the direction of that plane. you get something like a pencil shaft. I'll extrude it 12 inches. And now if you go in and you double click on, you can spin or rotate your pencil shaft.